What's good, everybody? ATO Ace the Outsider here with the Galactic Tribe podcast. Today is going to be a super special one. Welcome. If it's your first time watching the Galactic Tribe, listening to the Galactic Tribe, we talk all things Afrofuturism. At the core, though, we get a lot of inspiration from Black Panther and everything like that. We want to keep the conversation going. If you've been following us on our Instagram or TikTok, we use the term Wakandaverse pretty heavily, right? So we're gonna do the Galactic Tribe Wakandaverse edition today. All right, I have two special guests with me. I have Ra and I have Mama Dow Fall from a Black Panther Discord. So just a little bit about the whole Discord and everything. So when I'm doing the promotion for the Wakanda Alliance program, I'll jump into different Facebook groups, different Discords, different Reddits, and I'll try to see what the temperature is, and some things I can get away with saying. And full transparency, I'm not a super deep Black Panther fan. I love the comic, I love Priest Run, love Hudlin's Run, and then all the other things. But some people are heavy deep into it, so I got to give respect to the space, for them to exercise their fanhood in the right way. But I also want to cultivate a space where all the fans can come together and share their ideas about the miracle, the wonderful property that is Black Panther and Wakanda. So I have Ra and I have Mama Dow Fall. Ra, if you want to introduce yourself real quick and say a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you do.
Yes, my name's Rod. People call me Rod. I am from Brooklyn, New York, born and raised. I'm a comic book writer. I write the comic series Lawful Evil Comics.
Nice.
It's a superhero revenge story. It's available on Gumroad and some other places. But it is about a black man who's a vigilante, who's also the descendant of the Gahenian spider god Anansi, the god of stories. So it's a interesting kind of mix between uh, Daredevil, Black Panther, and we got a little bit of the boys in there too. So
Hey.
for the grown folk, you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's, if you like
nice.
the boys, I would say pick it up, check it out.
That's a dope mix right there. That's like a really hard mix. I think Black Panther and Daredevil should be in more conversation together just because of how dope they are, especially when it comes to the top martial artists, in
Yeah,
Marvel. Of course, what's the boy's name who just had Shang Chi? He's in
Shang-Chi.
the
Yeah.
he's in that top bracket, but Daredevil and Black Panther definitely up there as well for
Oh yeah,
sure.
most definitely.
So.
Especially with the link they have, because T'Challa and Matt have been friends for a very long time. So
Yeah, I would have loved for T'Challa to show up in the Daredevil series that was airing back a few years ago.
that'd have been
So,
dope. That'd have been dope.
man, but I heard he's coming back, so maybe there's a chance for that, and maybe there's a whole arc where kind of what happened in the Priest one, where T'Challa ends up in Hell's Kitchen.
Right.
So, man, we'll get into that a little bit later.
Word.
Yeah, but next I'll introduce Mamadou Fall. So, he has a bit of a feedback loop. It's all good, but this brother's from St. Lucia. He's jumping in the chat as well. So, Mama Dow, you have the floor, fam. Introduce yourself.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Mamadou Fall. I'm from Saint Lucia, like you said, in the Caribbean. I'm actually a doctor. I work in the cancer unit.
Mm,
I'm actually just coming from work right now. I've been a Black Panther fan for the past 20 years. I've been reading comics for the past 20 years. Well,
Mm.
comics in general, both comics and manga, any graphic novels. I love novels in general, and I also like the concept of Afrofuturism, which is why I hopped on the podcast in the first place to try and learn even a little bit more, especially as it pertains to the philosophy behind it. So I'm really excited to be on this podcast today, just to talk about my favorite um, superhero, and let's get things on it.
wow, wow. It's a pleasure to have you on here as a doctor. As a professional. Some people think that only comic fans can be have certain different whatever type of careers or whatnot. But the fact that you were a doctor, what's up about Afrofuturism and Black Panther, that's an amazing thing. That's an amazing
Right.
thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
All right, and introduce my co-host Lelouch. Finally jumped on, man. What's up with you?
I apologize. Work slowed me down quite a bit, but I made it in. Thank you guys for coming on to the podcast as well. I'm excited to get a chance to talk to you guys.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So just so you know, Lelouch, um, Mama Dow's he's in St. Lucia and he's got like a weird feedback thing going on, so I'm gonna mute him when he's not talking, just so there's not a feedback. But he's gonna use the
Right.
chat to jump into any conversation we're having. So, so welcome, Lelouch. How you feeling today, brother?
Not too bad. But if the weather was nice, I'd feel feeling any better. But yeah, it's a pretty good day. We're here to talk Wakandaverse with some fellow writers, so I'm excited to do that.
Yeah, and Mama Dow, you said you have a comic book as well.
Tell again? No, no, I don't.
You,
I don't. I don't. Radas.
Yeah,
got,
just me, just me.
gotcha. I don't know. Maybe you had like one where like homeboy is a doctor or whatever, going to the Caribbean, time traveling.
I mean,
That a time traveling the Caribbean doctor does sound like a dope, concept, man. You can go into the Maroons, you can go into,
A lot of stuff, man.
island revolutions, absolutely. So, yeah,
That's actually
one of
that actually
my
sounds like
all.
that sounds like an adventure that Black Panther should be having.
Word, that's
I
true too.
mean, yeah, fam.
One of my all-time favorite manga is about a doctor that kills a patient that ends up becoming a serial killer. So I mean, that's also
Oh,
another.
monster.
Yep, monster. Yep,
Mm, that's a
Johan
dope one.
is one of the
Yep.
greatest villains of all time.
Word. Yeah, so Mama Dog, you can unmute yourself too when you want to jump in. There's not too much of a layover, so whenever you want to unmute and jump in, you're more than welcome to. So, but yeah, so just a little bit about the Wakanda Alliance program, just so the brothers are caught up. We started in 2019, a bit after the Black Panther movie came out, and some of the brothers who are the core founders who were on this idea before I jumped on. They were like, yo, after we took kids to see the Black Panther film, they had the conversations, and the beautiful thing about those conversations is that the black boys involved were from different parts of the world. Like some of them were first or second generation immigrants, people from the continent of Africa who were staying on a certain part of Buffalo, and then the other side was black Americans who were whatever generation Americans.
Right.
But you got to see a conversation where they were both in, and they were becoming friends. They were befriending each other and having dope conversations. And so we wanted to keep the spirit of that going on. And so we founded the Wakanda Alliance program, and since then we've had bi-weekly workshops where we talk about not just Black Panther, but how Afrofuturism could be a vehicle for people who are in any craft. Like you don't have to be a super comic book person or a super bibliophile who loves books to be into this Afrofuturism idea. You could be a doctor, you could be a writer, you could be a nurse, you could be
Anything,
a
yeah.
plumber, you know what I'm saying, and still see that black people are in the future. And a future for us means that there's a future for the world. So but going back to how important Black Panther is, that was one of the first times most of us got to see ourselves in the future. Like Rob was talking about off camera, how we the long running stereotype about there not being many black people in space movies. Like Star Wars had a few, Star Trek had a few, but we're always a minority. We're always like a side character,
Right.
but never a main character. So yeah, so in the spirit of all that, we trying to turn that upside down. So yeah. What do y'all think when y'all hear the word Afrofuturism? Mama Da, I'll start with you. What do you think when you hear the word Afrofuturism?
Um, well, when I think of Afrofuturism, I think of at least an analysis and a critique on the way that basically the African and African diaspora's culture is now, and how it can be better in the future. The way that I look at it as well is also a blend of technology and understanding our roots back in Africa, and the blending of the two. And when I say the blending of the two, because at least within Africa, the what can I say, the mundane and the magical are normal. It's a
Right.
normal thing for magical thinking to be a thing. Even in the Caribbean, whether it be Jamaica, Haiti, or Saint Lucia, a lot of a lot of the civilians tend to be superstitious in that manner, right? So
Right.
Afrofuturism to me is a blending of all of those things together to produce at least a philosophy, so that we, as people from descendants of Africans and of the African diaspora, to be able to know how it is that we should act as black people in general. And not only so when I think of Afrofuturism as whole, I'm not only thinking about African Americans, Afro Caribbeans, and Africans. I'm also thinking of the African Indians, the African Chinese, and the African Russians as well. On all of those people all across the world, because in the Caribbean as well, the Caribbean is like a boiling pot. So there are lots of different ethnicities who mixed with the blacks, as well as the Caribs as well. So the black Caribs as well of Saint Vincent. That's so I think of all of those things when I think of Afrofuturism.
Yeah, wow, that's beautiful. You said the magic and the mundane are the norm. Like that's super powerful, especially when we're looking at how certain parts of our diasporic identity get villainized and demonized simply for existing, like without creating any faults in the disruption of society, but still how those things get villainized. So it's interesting that you pointed that out, because in other areas around the world, there's not that hard divide. I mean, of course, there's superstition and there's a prejudice, but at the same time, there's spaces where it can exist. Especially we're talking about like the southern part of America, where like the Gullah Geechee area, for example, where they're able to celebrate a little bit differently their own identity. Lelouch, you were about to say something?
I was gonna say, like it's interesting hearing that is the viewpoint in your country, because I mean, I know like me growing up in Chicago, like things like fantasy, like even speaking upon that in social areas was frowned upon. It was like, oh, you're into that fantasy stuff, like you Dungeons and Dragons, like it's something to be laughed at, and like kind of you're putting yourself out as an outcast if you are interested in those things. So to know that is normal to speak on things like that, that is definitely a revelation there, because it's so much the opposite here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, Rod, jump in. Same question for you. When you hear Afrofuturism, what do you think? What do you feel?
Yeah, similar to Mamadou's sentiments, I think of those blending. And it's funny that you mentioned the Gullah Geechee people, because me and my girl actually just came from South Carolina.
Hey.
Going on a tour with the Gullah Geechee people, and I noticed I have a in relation to that, I have a interesting point of view, because I'm half African American, half Caribbean American. My mother's family is from Barbados. My father's family from North Carolina and Maryland. So I look at things, and I look at how our culture historically, from a diasporic point of view, was connected. Like he said, the magical and the mundane kind of are always connected. You still have little stories and little tales, like little different things. Like the reason my comic main character is a descendant of Anansi is because my mom used to read me storybooks about Anansi's fables. The right and wrong, the allegories. This is our Aesop. This is our Homer. These are our myths that were not just myths, but they morality tales. And so I think of Afrofuturism as a way not only to look at how we, like Mamadou said, will use technology and grow with it, but also to look at the old ethics and the old ideas in order to use that in a right way, or use it in a proper way. To quote Amos Wilson, culture is not only food or music or stories and things like that, but it's also a way that you relate to each other as well as you relate to the outside world. So I feel Afrofuturism, and along with the idea of Wakanda, like when Black Panther came out, and everybody wanted Wakanda wasn't a place, it was an idea.
Yeah.
And this unity, this idea of unity. Okay, we got to move in this one accord. We got to move in this. So I think of Afrofuturism as this one notion that we're moving in, this one cultural thought process or framework that we're moving in. To quote the Bantu people, Sankofa, if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. Boom. So we have to extrapolate all those ethics, all those morals, all of those lessons to use to move towards the future. Because I feel like, especially, at least I can only speak from being in America, since we've kind of abandoned a lot of that, we've kind of been lost. So maybe we need to go back and see what You know what I mean? What our ancestors, had for us, and what rules they followed.
Yeah. Wow. Those are two. You both have very powerful responses. Yeah. Just holding on to that Black American experience too. For those of us who may not have a duality of identity, or maybe it doesn't dip into something that existed before colonials,
Hmm.
um, but finding those little breadcrumbs, right? Finding those breadcrumbs, whether they're in people or whether it is in the roots of the Black culture, and being able to extrapolate that and go a bit back further. It was wild when I was coming up in my teens, and seeing where all this stuff was at. So Buffalo, we have a strong presence of Kwanzaa and Juneteenth,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So the fact that we can even celebrate those things, something that only has existed for the past maybe 200 years, but as those using those as breadcrumbs and vines to go back to something that's back even further has been
Right.
beautiful. But then when you have the pot mixing of all the other identities, whether they're Caribbean or African or Afro Asian or Afro Latino, just to see like where all the crossroads are. It feels like a journey. It feels like a journey going back into your own identity. So it's
Yeah.
super beautiful that we have so many different perspectives from different places. So I'm really glad to have both of y'all on here. That's really dope. Lelouch, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, like my definition of Afrofuturism kind of expands almost every day. I get the chance to talk to about it. Now, for me, what the word that I connect most to it is innovation. Being able to create new ways of delivering information to people, of accepting information from people, and understanding new ideas and concepts, and being able to find places where we've had failures before, and finding ways to fix those and make those strengths going into the future. That's I feel like that is the way to the future. Like and it's something that has to be done by us specifically, because I mean nobody else is going to do that work for us.
Big facts here. You're right on with that. Innovation is definitely the key, because I mean, Ra has a comic where he's talking about the Anansi and the whole Ghanaian culture. We just interviewed somebody last week. The brother's name is Antoine Mitchell. He has a comic called Sankofa's Embrace. Maybe y'all have heard of it, but his is more like Afro fantasy, but in the same spirit of being able to take what was fantasy and myth and turning it into a world where that is truth. I think there's a lot of power in doing that, because you do get to open the door for more conversations around the content and the context. So it's super major that y'all bring those things up. But yeah, let's dip into it. Let's dip into how innovative Wakanda has been. Talking about like the first time y'all laid eyes on Wakanda, or the first time y'all heard about the Black Panther. I'll start the conversation just to go into it.
Hmm.
My first exposure to Black Panther was Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Before then, the main characters in my consciousness were like the Batmans, the Spider-Mans, the typical people. Falcon was in there somewhere. I think Steel was in there somewhere from like the movie or something like that. But I always got it mixed up with Shazam, because I couldn't figure out if Shaquille O'Neal was in one or the other.
Yeah,
but but yeah, I
that's
saw
just
Black Panther. I'm like, yo, who was that? And so like it came with his whole bio and everything. I'm like, oh, this dude is dope. And then like I started using him in the game. I'm like, oh, he's really dope. And I'm like, okay, well let me get my whole team of like black people. So it was Black Panther, Storm, Luke Cage, and then I forgot who the last one was. Probably Blade. I think it was Blade. So just using those characters. But so for a while I wasn't like heavy into comics at the time. I was just getting exposure to different things. But once Civil War came out, I was like, maybe I should just pick up comic collecting again, because before it was hard to jump into comics at the time, because like you would jump in the middle of a story and then there's all this backstory and all these other
Hmm.
connected comics and everything. I'm like, okay, I don't have really a guide of where to jump in at. But Black Panther made me want to go, nah, let me jump back into the 90s and see where a lot of this came from. Because I was raised in the '90s, you know, definitely a '90s baby, so I figured the '90s was the best place to start because I understand the tone of it. But since then, I was like, oh, this is major. This is amazing. So Rob, when was the first time you got involved with Black Panther?
I have two older brothers. They were both born in the '70s. So
Mm, mm,
my oldest brother introduced me to Black Panther when I was in high school.
mm-hmm.
Um, I was born in '86 for context.
Okay.
Um, and I'm reading this book. It was Priest Run.
Mm-hmm.
It's Priest Run, and I see this dude with these knives that can follow you, and they got different types of settings and stuff. He running up walls and jumping on, and
Mm-hmm.
nothing hurt. I'm like, yo, who is this? And my brother's like, yo, he had the graphic, the single issues and some graphic novels. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, this is Black Panther. He's the man.
Mm.
And I'm reading it, and I'm like, yo, this dude, like, how come nobody's talking about this dude? Like, we got to get some, somebody got to talk about him. And then, he didn't have any books. And then in college, I was, I was lucky enough to actually intern at Marvel in 2008,
Wow. Amazing.
and I got to read the Hudlin run from there.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I was like, yo, they really need to do like this dude is it's from the Who is the Black Panther story on. I was like, they
Mm-hmm.
need like him showing up Doom, and when your ancestors was in caves, we
Uh-huh.
was built. Oh, I was like, yo, this guy is wilding. Like
Yeah.
he going in on him.
Mm-hmm.
And Doom like, yo, you right. I'm like, oh, he got Doom backing down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I was really like, yo, he's really like that guy. Like the Black Panther's really that character. That especially being a black boy and a black man in that time, it's like
Mm.
there was a line in Holland's Run. I'm a paraphrase it. He went to the Bilderberg conference. You may remember
Mm-hmm.
when they tried to assassinate him. He was like, "I'm gonna forgive your lack of graciousness from meeting a black man that you can't bribe with a boatload of blondes,
Bonds, yeah.
a truck full of guns, and a plane full of money." And I was like, "Yo,
Yeah.
they like this is who he really is," and that's such a just having that presence and that statement itself is so powerful. Is so don't compromise your integrity, black man. Don't
Mm-hmm.
compromise. Just
Mm-hmm.
telling you that.
Yeah.
And so I that's when I kind of really fell in love with the character. As it's not just like he's cool. Yeah, he's got cool gadgets and he can fight and all that, but his moral compass is strong,
Mm.
strong, and that's very. I feel like there are very few characters that you could read who are like, I'm doing something and it may not look optically good, but I know it's for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always assured of that. And so that is what really got me to the character. Like, this person is doing things, they're unshakable in their integrity, in
Mm-hmm.
their moral compass, in their ethics, in their beliefs for what they're doing, what they feel is doing is right. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was, really, really for me was the big turning point when I really was like, Black Panther's like definitely one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, yeah, that would instantly jump up to any person's list. Mama Dow, jump in, man. I know you remember that line, don't you, fam? That line was powerful, dog.
Yeah, word.
Oh man. Yeah.
No, remember that? You there?
Oh, okay. All right.
You're
I
good.
thought you were going to unmute me, but when I first saw Black Panther, it was like chance, like really chance. I went to Miami with my mother. She
Mm.
went to Miami to shop because Caribbean people love to go to America to shop,
Uh-huh.
and we were in a mall and there was a comic store, and she just happened because she wanted me to get more into reading. This was like 2001 or 2002 around there, and she wanted to get me more into reading. And she got me Black Panther issue number 20 in
Wow.
volume 3. That's Christopher
Mm,
Priest's run.
mm.
And so when I'm jumping into it, all I'm seeing is Killmonger and Black Panther just fighting each other.
Ooh, that's a powerful one.
And I was like, okay, because again, this is one of the few times where I'm actually seeing black people in a comic book. Like, that's the main thing. I'm seeing Dragon Ball Z-esque action from black
Yeah.
people in a comic book. So I'm looking at it and I'm trying. So yeah, I'm really young, but I'm still able to understand at least a good amount of the words. And then that's when, because I posted that same quote in the Discord actually, as of recently. That was the quote where he says, "Hate is beneath the nobility of kings, and a king who hates is unworthy of the crown."
Mm.
So when I read that, I would never forget it because I was like, I that make that is such a powerful line to me, and that has been with me my entire life. So that was like the first time when I got introduced to Black Panther, and then it was like, so then we left Miami, came back to the Caribbean. There was no way to get comic books at all. So
Hmm.
then I just happened like probably 2007, 8 when I was looking at BET because everyone was into BET back then. That's when they
Yeah.
played the Black Panther cartoon,
Cartoon. Mhm.
Yep. Yep.
and it was like 5 episodes, right, or more, about five
It was
episodes
like
about that.
Six. It's
six or
six. It was
seven. Yeah.
six.
Six, like 6 episodes, and they played the entire all 6 episodes, the whole marathon, and that was like late in the night, and I was like, what is this? Like I didn't actually remember. I didn't actually remember the comic book. I found the comic book like years later. I remember the quote, but I didn't remember the comic book. But then I saw it and I was like, "What is this?" Like, there's a black man fighting people, being a superhero. Because back then I was more concerned with Superman, Batman,
Yeah.
Goku. Like, for me to see that, him having all these gadgets. Like I said, I remember that line. 'Cause I think it was in one of those episodes, right?
Something like that. Yeah, it was.
I think because it was one of the early episodes. Because it was in Who Is the Black Panther, right?
Yes, yes. It
Yeah,
wasn't Who was the Black Panther. Yes,
the Black Panther.
it was his
So
father. Yeah.
that was the point where T'Chaka died. That was the point where T'Chaka died, and he
Yes,
made that
yes.
line, right? So I was looking at the entire thing. I think the line that caught me the most is where T'Challa um stabs Claw, and he asks him if he has any children, and he says no, and he says, that's good because I'd have to kill them too. And I was like, I was like,
Oh
that's the
man.
line. That's the line.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how I was introduced to him. I'd never seen that before, and as I got more into it, I realized that he's such a cerebral character who has
Yeah.
access to all of these abilities. Most of these abilities being, well, basically exaggerations of any ability that we may have, especially his intellect and
Right.
his moral compass. His moral compass being gray at times because he's the king of the Wakanda. He's not the king of people, of everyone. He's the king of Wakanda. So as it pertains to Wakanda, I understood the distinction between, yes, he's a superhero, but Wakanda comes first.
Right.
That patriotism that I didn't really have, I got an understanding of what it means. So that's what I really like. That's what really got me into the character.
Yeah, we often go back to that cartoon. We play it often for the youth. You know what I mean? Because it's the only dang cartoon that exists for Black Panther. Let's get that out the way.
There is one
But
more. There's one more.
there is one
There's
more. Which
yeah.
what
It's
is it?
but it's the Avengers. It's the last season of the Avengers Assembled. It's called Panther's
Avengers
Quest.
Assemble, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It wasn't as hard hitting as the initial, but it shows off his intellect. He beats the entire Avengers. Basically, he outsmarts them and everything. So it
Yeah,
wasn't too bad.
that entire arc was like a Black Panther
Yeah,
wank.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The entire arc, he beat
The joint what he
everybody.
did with Thor with the hammer was like, up, get out of here. Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I watched that. When did I watch it? I watched it recently. It was like last year or something like that. I watched it completely. And the only reason I don't count that one is because in those episodes he's kind of part of something else. Like, even though it was pretty much his storyline and his own adventure, that was the last season of something else that already existed. So that's why I don't always count that one. But definitely, Panther's Quest was an integral part of, I think, T'Challa's storytelling, because again, it was like the second time at least this generation could see to see Black Panther animated. But just going back to Who was the Black Panther, I was looking for it in my book. I think we had took it out for like a display or something like that. But yeah, the whole Hudlin run was immaculate, and for them to animate those episodes in particular, and how T'Challa can just be. I mean, Wakanda in general is anti-colonial, but the fact that T'Chaka, anybody from Wakanda will speak on the anti-colonialism, like most other comics don't talk about that. At least not extensively. Like you're not gonna get that in a Spider-Man comic. You're not really gonna get that in a Batman or or even on X-Men. It might be like an allegory or something like that, but you won't
Right.
get it directly. Like, yo, who are you trying to think you can convince me with a truckload of blondes just because you see a black man who ain't gonna cave into you? And then I'm gonna talk down to you even further after that because you can't mess with me. I got something that you want and you can't get it no matter how much you try, right? So I think that's where a lot of the power in Wakanda and Black Panther storytelling is, and I'm sure it's echoed in, and maybe not echoed, but maybe it's also told through a bunch of other creative works. But when it comes to Black Panther, it just hit different. That's what it is.
I mean, so for me with my introduction to Black Panther, mine was kind of similar to Mamadou, but a little bit more uh, rebellious, I guess, to a degree. Because like I
Mm.
mean, with me, my dad, he was a Black Panther fan before I was born. Like he being in Chicago, following the the rise of Black Panther movement. He was a big fan of Fred Hampton. Who's also from Chicago.
Mm.
Um, like he gravitated to the Black Panther comic, immediately. Like he loved it, which is why I kind of rebelled against it to a degree. Like in my youth, like he was
I
like,
get
"Oh
it.
yeah, read this comic, read this." I was like, it's cool, but Spider Man's got this cartoon. Or it's cool, but it's only a Black Panther. Like I got a White Ranger, I got a Red Ranger, I got a Blue Ranger. Like
The
you
mind of a
know,
kid, right? Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah. So honestly, it wasn't until I mean, not necessarily adulthood, but when I got to college, when I actually started to really dive into like the meaning behind like why some of the stories were written, why I got to Black Panther. I think the first real time I paid heavy attention to him was actually kind of similar to Ant. With it was for me, it was when I went back to play Marvel vs. Capcom, not Marvel vs. Capcom, but Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. When they were doing like the Demi Civil War story, and
Yeah.
you got to deal more with Wakanda within that, and I was like, okay, like all these people are like Tony Stark is like okay, like not influencing this man T'Challa, like he's like a leader here. Why is he like such a leader to these people? Like, why do they respect him to this level? And
Mm.
started to reading some of the older runs was like, oh, like he's the richest man on the planet. Oh, he's got vibranium, which is the predecessor to adamantium. Like that's what they wanted to do with X Men.
Mm-hmm.
With Wolverine and the Weapon X program. Like, oh, like this country is the most powerful country on the planet. Like, why did I not know this? Why wasn't this at the forefront? Why isn't there more content talking about this out there? And and then you finally get to around to 2018 for the first Black Panther movie, and now it's the explosion of like Wakanda forever. And I really gravitated to the fandom after that, the heaviest, honestly.
Yeah. Um, especially the demeanor with other characters towards T'Challa, I think it was also a big draw, or is a big draw for a lot of people. The fact that they can't like shake him out of his integrity, that integrity that Rob was talking about. They call him Your Highness, and then they also say, "Yo, we're not gonna mess with him, not because he's dangerous, but because he could put it on us." If he wanted to, and when there's nothing we could do about it, and he'll do it in the sneakiest, craziest way. We won't see it coming, and we'll instantly regret messing with him. You know what I'm saying?
And then I
So,
mean, you just see
yeah.
him do some crazy, like like seeing that. Oh yeah, he ended Secret Wars, or like seeing him go up against like Doctor Doom, and like Doom is like, all right, let me really plan this out, and not like like just run through him like I did every other hero. Like seeing
Mm-hmm.
that how well he was respected within the Marvel overall universe is
Mm-hmm.
really what just like with like man, he's that guy.
Yeah. And I just want to shout out Mama Dow's mother for picking up that comic and seeing that, there was something there. I don't know what she saw in that comic in particular, and Mama Dow, you can explain further if she like knew about the Black Panther beforehand or whatever drew her to pick up that comic. But to get into a comic character because of your mother, like that's an amazing thing. Like my mother is one of the characters who got me into hip hop. She isn't a big hip hop head, but she likes listening to like different various 90s artists. And she, along with my uncles, her being the oldest of my uncles, is someone who really kept me grounded in my taste in music. So it's powerful when mothers get you involved in something. So shout out to moms, and again, Rob, shout out to your uncles for getting you involved too.
My big bro.
Your brother.
Actually, funny enough, now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if my pops was a big fan. Bless the Dead was a big fan of black exploitation films, especially Shaft. And if you look at the Shaft film, like all of the films, it's another. He's not a king, but he's a black man who is in a particular space where he dwells between. He's not a cop; he's a private investigator. But the police respect him. They're like, yo, we can't really give him. There's a line in Shaft where they're like, oh, one of the police officers is like, oh, that boy's got a big mouth, or he's got smart mouth on him, and then the other police officers like, and he could back it up too, and the other cop backs down, kind of like, oh, because there's a certain. I don't want to get into the whole masculinity debate, but there's a certain way that you carry yourself.
Yeah.
That people know, hey, I'm gonna offer you a handshake, but that handshake could turn into a fist if things go left.
That's it.
And T'Challa is really that person. T'Challa embodies that. As I'm gonna be, I'm cool with Steve. I'm gonna be cool. I could be cool with you, Tony. I could be cool with everybody. But remember, his first appearance was him fighting and beating the Fantastic Four to test them so he could get their help, right? So again, it's one of those things where, like, I'm cool with you, but never disrespect. Like there's a level of respect that we're gonna have here, and it's not going anywhere. It better not go anywhere. So I think I wonder about the correlation between those kind of characters. Those kind of that vein of those kind of characters that command respect without actually really having to do it. Because of the way they carry themselves.
Yeah, and there's definitely like a masculinity factor that should be addressed, and I've noticed that it has been changed and altered for certain audiences, and a lot of people are quick to say that, oh, because you want to promote masculinity, you're somehow anti-feminine, the same way that if you want to promote pro-blackness, somehow you're
anti-white, right.
You know what I mean? So I've been noticing a lot of those trends in those conversations. I think a lot of people end up arguing and kind of lose the core of those conversations, and we can touch on that a little bit, but as we go into the next phase, which is talking about the direction of the Black Panther comics. So we just finished up the John Ridley run, and it's been pretty much leaning on a side where most people do not like it. Some people have a little bit enjoyed it. They do have some drawbacks about it, especially them kind of overlooking the fact that this man is emperor of an intergalactic galaxy, and they're just like,
right.
Yeah, we're just gonna do the spy story and let M'Baku from the other universe like take care of this.
Right, just throw it out.
Yeah. But yeah, and then some people just completely avoided the John Ridley because they were so upset of Ta-Nehisi Coates' run. Which is also, if not equally, maybe a little bit less, but this is still very controversial. What he did as well, and you can chalk it up to him not having previous experience with writing full-length comics, or you can chalk it up to a bunch of different things. But as far as what y'all have seen in the whole Black Panther mythos, how do y'all feel about it? And then basically just that. How do y'all feel about it? Mama Da, I'll start with you. I'll meet you. There we go.
How do I feel about what exactly? The
direction that Black Panther has been in.
How do I feel about what exactly?
How do you feel about the direction Black Panther has been going?
How do you feel about the direction Black Panther has been going?
The direction it's directionless. The lack of direction is the problem. You can see, even especially from Ta-Nehisi's run, you can see that it's like he wasn't focused. He wasn't really sure where it was supposed to go. There was a complete change in a lot of the characters as soon as the Black Panther movie came out. So it looked like, so it's like he was bending his story to try to blend with the movie, because he brought in a lot of characters that had the same names as the characters in the movie, which he didn't need to do. Bent he bent Marvel's entire understanding of the multiverse on its head. It was a mess. But the problem, I think the real problem as it pertains to the Black Panther mythos and the direction in which it is going, is that it's losing the focus on the Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
And it creates a situation in which, and it's also a situation in which there are writers who are writing the Black Panther who A, do not know about the character, and B, fundamentally do not like the character.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying? So for example, in Tana Yisi's run, it it completely shifted, because it's basically you moving from what Jonathan Hickman was setting up and moving into Tana Yisi's run. It appeared that, at least at the end of Jonathan Hickman's run on Avengers, New Avengers, that the next run on Black Panther itself would have been more along the lines of philosophically defining what it means to be a Wakanda. You understand? How do Wakandans typically act? What is their culture actually like? Because when you look at Priest's run and Hudlin's run, those two runs don't you aren't in Wakanda amongst the people knowing exactly how they are as people. So for example in Star Wars, you can picture a personality theme with the Jedi, the Sith, the Mandalorians, and the Chiss. You can tell, right, how they would act if you met them in person. I still can't get a good grip on what Wakandans are like. So when going into Tana Isiko's run, when you first read the first few chapters or first few issues, you're thinking, okay, he's talking about philosophy and all these things. Okay, so they're going into that cultural direction, and then he just goes completely left, no pun intended, right? He goes completely left, talking about a, a dissolution of the Wakandan government and and the government structure. And I'm like, that's not the direction you should go in. You should probably play with the cards that you're already given. I understand that you don't like communists, you don't like dictators, you don't like monarchies, but that shouldn't be what your comic is about if the comic is literally about a monarchy, especially if that character uses his political power as part of his power set. And I was making that point in the Discord that, especially in Priest Run in particular, Black Panther's political power is a superpower in itself. In Priest Run, he's able to stop entire armies on his political power alone. He was able to stop Atlantis and one of those alien armies
Yeah.
just by himself,
The deviants.
just
Yeah.
deciding that today you guys are not doing anything. He crashed the entire world's economy just solely based on a whim to stop Killmonger from getting more political power. It was literally a superpower in and of itself. Also, what I thought the other direction I thought he was going to go into, I thought he was going to go into the magical direction when he brought Shuri back, right? Because Shuri was super magic based. It's still super magic based, although her magical moveset isn't actually defined either. We actually still don't know what the extent of a magical power is. But I thought that's the direction he was going in. Then he completely flips everything on its head and makes Wakandans the colonizers in a in an
Yeah.
empire. And I'm like, but the Wakandans, that's not what they're about. That's
Yeah.
completely out of it. That's completely out of it. Like I said, he didn't know what the character was like. He didn't know what the character was like. He didn't know what Wakanda was like. And although I have no problem with diversity, right? But the heavy reliance on diversity that defines the first part of Tana Isiko's run, I found was unnecessary, in that they were already gay Wakandans in power. Taku was gay. They were already female Wakandans in power. There were male Wakandans in power. All of them were black, right? And the Wakandans in themselves were already xenophobic. You understand? I thought if there was anything to rely on in terms of character flaws, you would think it would be the xenophobia part. Because
Right.
even that, yeah, because even that, Jonathan Hickman actually addressed when he had Black Panther meet Barack Obama and basically confessed to him that he always thought that, I can't remember, but I'm paraphrasing, but he always thought that Wakandans were better because Wakandans relied more on helping the whole instead of just the individual. He spoke about that when he met Obama. And so it's like it's two black men and showing the distinction between the African and maybe the African American, at least in that sense, or basically the Wakandan basic more and the African American. But what I'm saying is that the Wakandan, I still don't know what the Wakandan is like. Yeah, you saying that, but what makes Wakandan so idyllic? If you were to go based upon Ta-Nehisi Coates and John Ridley's runs alone, you would think that Wakandans were just a bunch of idiots, like people just running around with like chickens without a head. Like they just always were like they never like anybody, whether it be Wakandans or anybody else. It's like they don't know what they're doing. So I don't know. John Ridley's run was just. I think I had enough. I didn't even finish. I didn't even finish reading.
Yeah, I saw on Discord that you were just like, yeah, what happened? Just summarize what happened. I'm not gonna read it.
Yeah, I couldn't. It's always even John Ridley because most Black Panther runs have a black moment. When I say a black moment, I mean a moment that all black people would appreciate. So in Don
Yeah.
McGregor's run, they had the Black Panther versus the Ku Klux Klan. In
Right.
Hudlin's run, they had Black Panther teaming up with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Even in Ta-Nehisi Coates' run, he tried to have all the black characters fight Killmonger's empire, and he brought in black characters that have not been important since the early 2000s. Like even
Right.
he pulled it off. I saw that John Ridley tried to pull it off with the Buffalo Soldier thing, but it fell flat on its face. So it was like there were a lot of people who didn't even bother reading John Ridley's run because of his work on Batman and Superman. I think he was the same one who had Superman being molested in a jungle or something as well.
In
So it was
a
like
prison, yeah. It was in a,
in a prison, yeah. So it's like, yeah. So a lot of people wouldn't have read it in the first place. I think
Yeah.
that's where I think the direction that it needs to go in, is somewhat like a revolution in terms of in like akin to Christopher Priest in that Don McGregor's run and Stanley and Jack Kirby's run was filled with Black Panther being Black Panther, but with Christopher Priest's run, he heavily relied on Black Panther being strategic and being a techie. He said that in an interview that he did that because that was how Stanley wrote the character. The character was from a technologically advanced nation. I'm also saying that, yeah, so in the direction that they should go, they should flip it again and rely more on T'Challa as a person, his moral compass as a hero, as well as for me, the add-on of restoring his political power and adding a bit of magic to that. And that's why I said the thing about the mundane and the magic being hand to hand, because T'Challa and all the Wakandans speak about it all the time, how it's important to worship the gods and the magic and so on and so forth. But T'Challa isn't a magic user. Like he doesn't use magic. He barely ever uses magic, if at all. Like it's not part of his move set. So at least to show a growth in the character, they should give him some magical abilities and allow him to use it offensively and defensively. Not that to completely throw the technology out of the way, but to add more to the character, to show growth with the character. Because he haven't been showing growth. The character has been basically in one place. He's been an emperor, but what proves to me that he is an emperor? There's nothing. So you see how in Dragon Ball Z they turn Super Saiyan, so you know they go to another level.
Right.
T'Challa is the emperor, but how do I know that he went to that level? There's nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my take.
Word. Yeah, no, an excellent
Right.
take for sure. Thank you for sharing all those opinions. And I think you're spot on with that. Like,
Yeah.
again, when I was reading the Colts run, I was trying to rushing through it because I was trying to get to other content plus get everything ready for what I was about to do next. But yeah, it seemed like he went to make more issues around Wakanda and started to come at Wakanda. Maybe I'm not using the term correctly, but objectively, instead of looking at what Wakanda already was, who Black Panther already was, and working with that, but instead trying to add more chaos to see like how they would handle it. And now you got a whole bunch of angry Wakandans who have just been angry since that run too. Like it seems like all they want to do is like they're just mad because of everything that's going on.
Definitely.
Word.
So, Rod, you want to jump? Oh, well, before you go on to that, I just remember you just unlocked a memory for me, Mama Dow. One of the first Black Panther comics I picked up was this one here, where he was fighting the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah, and I was like, wait a minute, I've never seen. Maybe like some individual comics where people were like saying, oh yeah, versus the Ku Klux Klan, but I never saw an actual Marvel comic address a black man fighting against the Ku Klux Klan. Like you saw, they had him strung up, but he bumped off the cross, and he's about to lay these boys out. So like, I had to frame this one just because it means so much to me. But yeah, that was one of the first comics I came across. So, but yeah, Rod, you have the floor, man. Go ahead, jump in on this conversation about how you think the direction of Black Panther has been going.
Yeah, I think me, brother Mamadou, we had agreed several times in the Discord about just how directionless, how rudderless the story looked. Also, Priest did a rebellion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hudlin, him and Mayberry did a rebellion, right? Like a uprising.
Mm-hmm.
So you just gonna go turn around, Coates and Ridley and do another rebellion? Like, come on, like yeah. Give us something else. It just seems like they keep creating rebellions for no reason. It's like they're revealing things about when we originally were introduced to Wakanda. It's this idealistic place. It's technologically advanced. They have cures for cancer. They're all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then we go around and we look at Coates' run, and you would think none of that was true because they got sex slavery going on. They got all of this other stuff going on. And it's like,
yeah.
Well, what? Hold on. We never heard anything about this before, and I hate the fact that I think it may have been Mamadou or somebody was saying that they keep adding places in near and around Wakandan like territory to create bad guys. So first we had Naganda, then we had this, then we had then we had that, and it's like, yo, like
there's always a place in Wakanda that doesn't like Wakanda.
Right. It's like, we had the Jabari, then we had the this, then we had that, and it's like, yo, like hold on, like, so you're telling us all this time the Wakanda's been surrounded by people who were terrible, hurting their own people, trying to destroy Wakanda, all of this stuff like that. And from what we know, Wakanda's altruistic. So they're helping people, giving refugees. So which is it? You can't have it. Is it Uchiwali or is it One Mike? Which are we doing? What are we talking about? What are we talking about? And I know that it can be dualistic. It can be, you can be trying to make things better while still having things that are bad. But it seemed like a lot of the stuff that they brought out into the Coates and Ridley run was just to make it seem like Wakanda was the worst place ever. And I get that Coates, he hates monarchies, but he loves Game of Thrones, right? So what we talking about here? He just wanted to get his stuff off. And he admitted during an interview that he wasn't a Black Panther fan. He was a Spider-Man fan. He was a fan of all these other characters. And my first thought was when I heard that was like, why is he writing it then? Yeah. He should not be writing this. There's several other people who could be writing this story that you should look into writing this. And I guess they thought, he's a writer for the Atlantic, so it's gonna, bring his cachet up and blah blah blah. And the only thing it did was take a character and assassinate that character in favor of introducing his ideations of taking down patriarchy when Wakanda itself never had that structure, because Wakanda's been a kingdom and a queendom at one time. Wakanda's never had any issue with that kind of thing. So you're introducing it now here. Oh, Wakanda, they were colonizing places. They stole a place from the originators. Where did that come from? Because Jack Kirby didn't tell me that. Nobody told me that. So where does that come from?
Yeah.
They create new characters and new things, like just to paint Wakanda as a bad place. So for the sake of conflict, and it's like, yo, it sounds like you want Wakanda to be America, so you could complain about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well, it has all of this. That's the antithesis of what this place is supposed to be. So
Mm-hmm.
why are you changing it into this war torn? He want essentially a stereotype of what people think of African nations. Why are
Mm-hmm.
you doing this? You should know better. And then with Ridley, he's I don't even know if it's Ridley didn't read or Ridley's just a bad writer. Ridley's
Mm-hmm.
not a good writer.
Mm-hmm.
He for whatever reason, he has these ideas, and we've talked about it in a group. And he writes these ideas, and I don't know if he has like short-term memory loss or whatever. I don't know. I'm a big fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a trope in JoJo called Araki forgot. Araki's the creator, and
Uh,
so they'll put things in the manga where it'll happen once and never happen again. And people are like, oh, Araki forgot. He's creating stuff. Araki forgot. And I feel like Ridley puts things together, and it's like this goes nowhere.
Nowhere.
Like the whole thing with Gentle, he was like, oh, Gentle was the spy and all this other stuff, and it's just like, oh, we're not really gonna use Gentle. He's just gonna be kind of there sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Coates at least tried to see his story through, as bad as it was. Ridley seemed like he was like, oh, he had like 20 ideas, and he put them all on a board, and he said, let's hit them, and then he never paid them off. They never went anywhere. And then it was like, yo, you only have 15 issues to do this, bro. So you need to figure out one idea and stick with it. And he was, oh, Buffalo Soldier, oh, this one. It's like, why did you what are you doing? Why are you bringing us these characters? Why are you bringing us these things that happen? Omalola, okay, boom. Okay, she's probably not going to show up again. Buffalo Soldier's probably not going to. Like, Black Panther already has a supporting cast. You don't need to create new supporting characters to be your mouthpiece or whatever the case is. Just tell the Black Panther's your mouthpiece. Tell the story using him. He's the main character. It seemed like Coates and especially Ridley wanted to, like Mamadou said, mold things into the way they wanted them to be, regardless to how what was structured already. Because it creates an error in continuity. It creates a problem in continuity. It's like, this doesn't happen. And then the biggest problem that occurs is if you read any other story with Black Panther at the time, Avengers, that little Thor mini we saw, Black Panther's a completely different character. He's acting completely different. He's dressed completely different. He's people are relating to him differently. Like in Ridley's run, Cap was mad aggressive. Oh, blah 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 blah. In Avengers, it's like, oh, he's just taking his own time. It's like, what? Like it's clear that there's no unity here. There's no continuity here. There's no unity, and people are just using a story to kind of do what they want to do and say what they want to say, as opposed to actually telling a story that furthers the character and grows the character. When we saw Shuri come back as the Griot, and we saw Zavari, I thought we were gonna get more magic, like you said, more magic. Get more into the other totems we haven't seen. They have 5 or 6 other totems we have not seen. Get into that.
Yeah.
There's so much more. And then in Ridley, either Ridley or between Coates' run or Ridley's run, or it was, I think Jeff Thorne wrote it. The story that we saw during the King in Black story, where Shuri had the armory, this alchemic armory, and it's like, what's that about?
What's that about?
He was like, it's a fusion. Yeah. He's like, Shuri, I need you to go into the armory, the fusion of magic and science. What's that about? Show us that. Show us those things. Yeah. And it just seemed there was so much. And again, I said this in the Discord, and I really mean it. And I hate to say it again, but I really felt like, especially the leading up to and from the whole the X of Swords story, where Storm stole the Stormbringer, and really she was like, "Oh, I don't have time to ask you for this," and blah blah blah. It's like, did you just beat up my sister to steal this? Like, this girl was your sister-in-law.
Right.
He said, if you wanted it,
You could have
Whatever
just
you wanted, I
asked.
would have gave it to you. It
Straight
doesn't
like
matter.
that.
I don't have any time. It's like, what was the next? It's like the writing is like, man, black man bad. It's like, that's it. Black man
Mm,
bad. It's like, what's the rationale for this? There is no rationale
mm,
because we need a person to throw our trash on, and we're gonna choose T'Challa, even though
mm,
as level-headed as possible. Aurora, if you wanted this, you could have just said, "Hey, I would have had it to you the next day, another next hour, whatever you wanted." But you
mm,
have to go. I gotta go and steal it. Why? What's the reason? Like, and then to make it seem like he's wrong for asking you to ask him or asking, hey, just ask it. Just ask. It's not yours. It's ours. But I would have they told T'Challa, yo, you can't give this away, and he would have said, I don't care. This is my girl. She can
mm,
have it.
mm,
But
mm.
just I don't understand, and this is my biggest problem with the way the Black Panther's going.
Go
Why
for it.
do they have to constantly disrespect him?
Mm-hmm.
Why does he have to constantly be disrespected? I don't understand. It's in the beginning when he was spying on the Avengers and all this other stuff in Priest run. In Ridley's run, they made it seem like it was a cardinal sin. But in Priest run, it was like he's been spying on the Avengers the whole time. This is not his
Mm-hmm.
first rodeo.
Right.
Oh, he's got these agents all around the world, all around protecting Wakanda and whatever. His father did the same thing. So
Mm-hmm.
what? Why is that a big problem now? It's not like y'all allowing people to just come into Wakanda any Tom, Dick, and Harry to come into Wakanda all willy nilly. This is
Mm-hmm.
how y'all operate. This is how you've always operated. So
Mm-hmm.
why now that T'Challa revealed it to somebody that he is a bad guy? It's like, oh, I'm using vibranium, this special vibranium to record people's powers. Great, great. Because if
Yeah.
this person decides that they're going to turn against us, or if this person is, let's say that the Civil War was still going on, or
Mm-hmm.
the Secret Empire was still going on, and America
Yeah.
tried to, we saw what happened there.
We saw it happen. Right. Absolutely.
You
So
telling
yeah,
me
I'm
you
gonna
don't
make a
want,
fail safe.
yeah, we don't want contingency plans? Are we
Yeah.
crazy here? And
Yeah.
the fact that Shuri, who was more aggressive about Wakandan pride than T'Challa, was the one who was upset with him about it. I'm like,
Mm.
where did this come from?
Mm-hmm.
Miss, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna blow up Atlantis, and my brother told me not to. What are you talking about? Where are we going with this?
Oh
Who like?
man.
I don't understand the moral switches of this. She would have been like, "That's great. We need these." That's what the Shuri I know would have done.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, it all seems to be this thing to disrespect and discredit what T'Challa is doing, and I don't understand why. You
Mm.
don't. If you're trying to raise up other characters, that's cool. But Batman never needed to disrespect. They never need to disrespect Batman to raise Nightwing, or
Mm-hmm.
Batgirl, or any of the Robins, or Red
Mm-hmm.
Hood. They
Mm-hmm.
never need to do any of that stuff because by virtue of the character, everybody who is around him is dope. So
Yeah.
why T'Challa got to be disrespected for everybody to be on some sort of high horse or moral high ground? It doesn't make any
Mm-hmm.
sense. And
Yeah.
I don't, I've never read Eve Ewing's writing. I hope she's a Black Panther fan. I hope she's a T'Challa fan, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
because if not, I don't know what it's gonna look like. That's
Mm-hmm.
all I got to say. I don't know what it's gonna look like.
So
Go ahead,
a
Lelouch.
couple things from that because I know you just you put out a lot there. One, I think you answered the your overarching question as to why things went how they did during that run yourself is just the fact that the writer wasn't a fan of the characters. He didn't have the knowledge of how the dynamic between you know the Wakandans and T'Challa and Shuri. So they went and based it more off of what they see in the media of Africa versus what was already established within the Wakanda society within the comics. That's my thought on that. And then for the second part, like you were saying that how they don't disrespect Batman to put up Nightwing or to any of it, and actually that's slightly incorrect because the within the Bat family they are now like pushing the idea of of how flawed Batman's ideology is towards the city, and just showing that Grayson has a better view of how he wants to use it to protect the city, or even how Red Hood's ideology towards that is flawed, but he still has a more directly impactful way of influencing the city of Gotham versus what Batman's
Are you referring to the
leaning.
self-face story, the fail-safe story?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I've read that. I feel like that's a rehash of. So I don't want to get too much into Batman. I'm a big Nightwing fan. I love Batman. I grew up reading Batman, but
All good. Yeah.
I feel like that's a rehash of uh older Tower of Babel, OMAC project, like all of these where Batman went too far and now whatever. And Dick's always been the leader of his generation. It's just that they took too long, and Dan Didio, the guy who used to be the president of DC, hated him, so they never let him shine. But
Yeah.
now he's fired. They fired him, so he's getting his shine. So that was more of a like editorial backstage politics kind of thing, as opposed to
Fair.
you know,
Definitely fair.
yeah, Bruce has always had some kind of, his paranoia has always been bad for his family at the end of the day. But I mean, he always meant well. And here's the thing, his entire, and I think that again, like I say, I don't. When I say they don't need to diminish Batman to raise Nightwing up. One of the things that Bruce promised Alfred was that he would raise him to not be him so that he didn't need Nightwing. He didn't need Robin to be a whole human being. Dick is Nightwing because he is a hero, because he's an honest person, he's a loyal person, he's a good person. And his parents, and he's a thrill seeker. I mean, let's he likes jumping off of buildings. We like he knows he likes jumping off buildings. But he has a good moral compass.
Yeah.
Bruce, if you read the Tom King run, he admitted that Batman was a crutch. When Selina broke off the engagement, he was like, I created Batman to shield myself from my childhood trauma. And this trauma Batman can't save me from. He admitted that it was a crutch. So I feel like Bruce deliberately wanted to make sure Dick was not him, was not the person. So he fails, but Dick was his admitted greatest success,
Gotcha.
in that manner.
Cool.
Maybe T'Challa will get something like that one day. A great success, redemption.
Yeah, yeah. Mama Dow, did you want to jump in real quick? I saw you unmuted for a little bit. If you wanted to jump in real quick before we go into our next segment. Oh, try to unmute. He didn't unmute. Oh, oh, he's got another thing jumping in.
Mama down
No.
here.
Yeah, I'm there. I'm there.
There we go, dude.
Okay, cool. Did you want to jump in to respond to what Ross said real quick, or you good?
Wasn't he talking about Batman and Nightwing and that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I was comparing it to T'Challa and,
Right. Yeah. That nerd tangent. I
Okay.
apologize.
Well, if I had to jump in on anywhere as it pertains to the Batman and Nightwing thing in particular, I would also talk about the Black Panther, White Tiger dynamic that was never fleshed out and never expanded on
Oh,
from
okay.
Christopher Priest. They
Yep.
never expanded on it. I was never expecting White Tiger, especially after he became the White Tiger. I was never expecting anyone to try to make him a Black Panther, but I was at least expecting it to be a situation where, okay, one of the main complaints about T'Challa has been the fact that he's never there to be in Wakanda,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
is problematic to me because I'm like, Doctor Doom barely ever actually leaves Latveria because he has the robots who, what is it, the life model,
Doombots.
decoy,
Yeah.
the life model, yeah, the Doombots, the life model decoys.
LMDs.
What's his name? Black. Is it Black? Nighthawk. Nighthawk also has LMDs. So
Right.
why doesn't the King of Wakanda have an LMD?
Right.
At least if he doesn't have an LMD, why isn't White Tiger his representative on the Avengers? He has stuff to do. Like he's a busy person. Like why is it? I'm not asking why he is the leader of the Avengers, but at the same time, he's the leader of a nation. I don't think he has much time to be running up and down every time the Avengers have a gigantic crisis.
Mm-hmm.
In the same manner that Blue Marvel has what do you call it again? He has like a detector, a danger detector.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
why doesn't Black Panther have a danger detector? Considering he's the contingency plan guy,
Right.
why doesn't he have a danger detector to say, okay, it's on danger level 10. Okay, I'm going to come out now. White Tiger, you can come back in. Let me just deal with what's happening there. Like, they have many different ways to deal with that. And the fact that it is still a complaint that Wakandans have is an issue because he's always saving the Wakandans. Why are you angry? Why are you
Do
angry?
you want to live? Like, come on now. Like,
So
I'm.
now,
Yeah.
to address some of what Ra said, I was one of the things I wanted to address was he was right about the totem thing. They had like six other totems that have never been explored,
Yeah.
and there was even one of the recent issues. I think it was in the history of the Black Panthers thing
Yep.
where they spoke about the totems coming together to fight some.
Right.
Yeah, and I was like, wait a minute, this is the second or the third time they brought the totems in. There was
Yeah.
the Black Panther Unconquered. They
Yeah.
brought up the totem thing again,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
think the totem thing was brought up long before. Like I can't remember exactly what it was, but a good while back, they also brought up the totem thing when in the Killmonger series where they had the goddess of war Luna that gave
Hmm.
Killmonger his powers.
Mm-hmm.
She was supposed to be a totem that was forgotten. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like they have, so again, it's directionless. It's like they have these ideas that have been sporadically thrown out there. It's like they're throwing mud on a wall to see what sticks, but they never actually develop anything to make it stick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even
Mm-hmm.
adding to that, if you go way back to Don McGregor's run in the jungle action time, they had this they had this part of Wakanda where they were just dinosaurs.
Right.
They were
That's
just
right.
Oh
dinosaurs.
yeah. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
a point in T'Challa's journey where he met this spirit, some strange spirit who tested him, and then he never mentioned again.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that irks me the most is which is for all the Black Panther writers across the board, outside of obviously Priest and Don McGregor, because Don McGregor didn't have the character there. It's Hunter. We just have Hunter floating about and he's not being used. He's a talent enhancer. He jobs randomly. I like I
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out if isn't he's supposed to be the head of the Hatut Zaraze, but they never use him. I think
Nope.
he would have been a more appropriate character to use than Jai or
Mm-hmm.
Jay, whatever
Yeah. Yeah.
John Ridley was. It seemed like a plot that the the white the white wolf would have had. That sound like a plot. And adding to all of this, the lack of which also adds to white wolf as well, the lack of which Ra also brought up, the lack of unification of Wakanda, and the fact that they keep on having these factions who keep on appearing, who seem to have just not appeared when Killmonger was attacking Wakanda, when Namor was attacking Wakanda,
Mm-hmm.
when what's his name, when the Black Order attacked Wakanda. Who
Killed
are all
everybody.
these yeah, who are all these new factions who are strong as Abomination? Like they have people who just walking around as strong as Abomination. They literally walk around the villages normally, like, and they are strong as Abomination. They
Yeah.
never fought, they never defended Wakanda, but they're attacking T'Challa, who actually does defend Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
never fought against the Jabari. I'm so confused because at the end of the day, you can't just add these characters in. You have to explain where have they been. At least for Hunter, at one point, I think it was during the Empire Marvel event, they showed him under the orders of T'Challa defending Wakanda. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but then they never use him again. And then
Mm-hmm.
it keeps on going. And I like Ra said again, the contingency plan thing, they acting like it's such a cardinal sin. I don't understand. Is it that T'Challa is not supposed to have a brain? Like he's supposed to just be this dumb guy, which again leads to the whole point of being the leader of the Avengers. They made him the leader of the Avengers for a reason, and I always found it very strange that Captain America was leading T'Challa because T'Challa is the leader of a nation. He's the general of the Wakandan army. I'm pretty sure, and he has the contingency plans. I'm pretty sure he has a deeper understanding of the skills of the Avengers than even Captain America has. As
Mm.
much as Captain America has been this war leader and such, T'Challa now has the experiences and the skills and the intelligence of all the Black Panthers before him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Which.
pretty sure that he's more appropriate as the leader. But at the same time, just put an LMD. Just put an LMD.
That's
Why
it.
are we? And again, but one more point I wanted to make was the one about was one about rivalries.
Okay, go
What
ahead, quick.
made the T'Challa and the Namor rivalry so compelling was the bitterness about it, right?
Mm.
And then it seems like they just kicked it to the wayside. It was the same thing for Doctor Doom as well. It was a bitter rivalry. They just kicked it to the wayside. And the Nighthawk rivalry seemed to become bitter, and they kicked it to the wayside. I'm wondering, I don't understand. I thought T'Challa was supposed to be the the symbol of Afrofuturism in the Marvel universe. He's
Mm-hmm.
not even being used to explore African cultures or other African heroes.
Yeah.
So what are they using him for?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's
Wow. Wow, yeah, these responses have been incredible. I've had a really good time hearing y'all feedback, and it's good to finally, like, instead of reading through comments and comments and threads and threads and threads and threads, to actually talk with people about this. I know there's a lot of other podcasts out there who talk about Black Panther and everything, but I only got so much time in this world, so I don't have time to hear a bunch of rants. But I think these are some really great opinions, and as we push forward with our Wakandaverse initiative, we definitely wanted to understand those frustrations, but also jump into our creative mindsets as well. So as we jump into the last 15 minutes of our show here, I want to know, like, if there was a Black Panther story or a Wakanda story y'all could tell, what stories would it be? Would you want to go back into the to the totems? Do you want to go into more of a White Wolf side? Like, and the thing I'll bring up too, like y'all are mentioning, like a lot of these one-off stories, like King in Black and Wakanda Unconquered, or a lot of these one-offs feel a lot better than these long 15, 16, 20 issue runs. I got an anthology called Tales of Black Panther or Tales of Wakanda. That's like 18 different stories. I'm like, yo, I would have taken any of these stories over what I've been getting now. So, by all means, if y'all could just drop a quick prompt of what y'all would do if y'all had the ability to write Black Panther. Lelouch, do you say you want to jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. There. So
Go
for
for it.
me, I would want to have a story that kind of really directly impacts how the larger landscape of Marvel works, if that makes any sense. Because, like, I mean, obviously, we know within the Marvel mythos how powerful of a country Wakanda is, but all the things that come up within it seem very isolated. Like, I mean, like, you know, Killmonger and T'Challa squaring off doesn't have a whole lot of uh, waves that affect things than X-Men or in Spider-Man. Like, I would want to see more stories within Wakanda that actually branch out and affect the larger world, because it is such a powerful nation that conflicts within that should affect the world, just like how things in Russia affect the rest of the landscape of the world. It just something that just makes sense to me. I know that's a more general way of speaking there, but yeah, it just I don't understand why Wakanda always just feels entirely isolated and doesn't affect the rest of the Marvel world more consistently.
Yeah, yeah, cool. What do y'all think about that? And Mama Dow, your sound is back normal, so you don't have to mute whenever you're not speaking. But Ra and Mama Dow, what do y'all think about Otis's prompt?
I think that makes perfect sense. I feel like any nation whose nation leader, whenever the leader changes hands, one would that how does that affect stock prices? How does that affect alliances? How does that affect treaties? There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that go into that where you can't just be like, oh well, it only happened here and blah 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 blah. It's like no, like you're talking about the most technologically advanced warrior nation in the world. If Killmonger suddenly becomes king or whatever the case is, how do is the thing start the same? Because when T'Chaka died and T'Challa became king, specifically T'Challa decided he was going to open up and start exploring the world. That was his creed, in some instances. So if Shuri
Mm.
becomes queen or Killmonger becomes king or somebody else, that has to we have to see some repercussions. We have to see some, the rest of the world has to have conversation or an opinion on it at the very least.
Spot on. Love it. Love it. Mama Dav, what do you think about Odysseus' prompt?
Yeah, he's 120% correct. But especially if you look back at Priest Run, that's what Priest did. He kept on showing how the rest of the world is affected, especially through Agent Ross. He used Agent Ross as a vehicle to tell you what's happening in America, what is America thinking. You would see how T'Challa made, I think he made the vibranium either privatized or public, and it crashed the economy. Like he kept on showing the political. That's why I said the point about the political power being its own superpower, because he could crash the world economy at any time. I would like to see more Black Panther stories that affect the world, the wider Marvel universe like that. Especially considering he's an emperor. He's supposed to affect the entire galaxy now.
Right on, right on. Yeah, no, I like that one. So let's put a pin in that one. Orders, I like that one a lot. Sorry, Lelouch, my bad. I'm using your personal name and everything. Got your government out here. My bad. Rod, do you want to go next? Do you have a Black Panther story prompt?
Yeah, my Black Panther story prompt would be twofold. The first, as I mentioned, always wanting to explore those totems and what they mean for the other countries and how those affect, if those totems are a part of the different tribes that are surrounding Wakanda, how their existence or lack thereof affects the people. Because if Black Panther is a protector of Wakanda, who's protecting these countries and making sure that they're not, warlords or whatever the case is, taking
Yeah,
advantage of them.
because their gods
Yeah.
suck right now because they always
Right.
living in squalor.
right. You see these refugee camps and all this stuff, and the Wakandans feet. Like again, I said it's like they're trying to make this kind of stereotype of African nations,
Yeah.
and give us more of that in relation to how T'Challa could be like, I'm building these places back up, and I need your help, or I want your help, or we have to not only from a financial standpoint, but from a spiritual standpoint. Because if T'Challa is the spiritual leader of the Black Panther of the Wakanda, the Black Panther is the spiritual leader of Wakanda. He's their moral compass and their upliftment. So build up those. Maybe you don't have to keep fighting these people. Maybe you build those people up with I'm gonna help you guys appoint your leaders and your heroes and get yourselves together in a good place. And that building, like there's again, like I said, there's always a rebellion or some sort of burning down of Wakanda. Like, can we build now? We destroyed already, right? 5% is 8. We destroyed already, so let's build, right? Can we build? And the second part to that would be T'Challa being in Wakanda and being the Wakandan king, and then, like Brother Mamadou said, Casper Cole, put him back into you. If you want Black Panther in America so bad, put Casper Cole back in America, please, because he was at the end of the Wakandan that story, the graphic novel World of Wakanda, and then we never saw him again. You don't really need to. I get that they want him to. They're not sure if he's Batman or Aquaman. They're trying to figure it out, but T'Challa's T'Challa. Let him do his thing. When he needs to come to America, he can. But Casper can be his stand-in, his liaison. Like, all right, you don't got no place. You lost your wife. You lost your job. All that stuff. I'm gonna give you a new purpose. You're gonna be the Wakandan ambassador. Boom. That's simple. While I'm building up Wakanda.
I love that. I love that prompt a lot. Lelouch, what do you think of that one?
I mean, it's another one that kind of seems like it should be a no brainer. Like why wouldn't you have more stories involving that? Like I feel like I don't know. I just have a weird kind of feeling towards how they do Black Panther stuff in general. So like certain things that just seems like it should be obvious to us, it just kind of goes out the wayside for them. So I mean, it makes sense to me. Bottom line, that was just expanded tangent. Yeah.
Word. Okay. Cool. Mama Dow.
Was in a prompt.
Yeah. How do you feel about Ross prompt?
Okay, yeah, I agree with Ra's prompt. In fact, I would have I couldn't say it better myself. I had put it in the Discord a while back about the fact that when you actually watch the Wakanda on a map of the Marvel universe, all the countries around Wakanda are all countries that are standings for South Africa, every
Mm-hmm.
single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then all of them get destroyed, they get blown up. Some at the end of whatever run it is, whether it be a Wolverine run, something happens to them. So I agree with Ra in that it should be T'Challa building up these places and not colonizing them, but having some sort of connection with them. In the adding to what he said in the Shuri comic, they had it was revealed that T'Challa was in the head of a Pan African alliance attempting to make Africa unified and one, and they never did anything about that. So that's another one out there. That concerning the totems, I also agree with that. The totems are actually just the totems of different tribes of Wakanda. So they should probably create a storyline in which they unify Wakanda and all of these factions who are just dangling about. Even Killmonger has his own village in Wakanda and it has never been mentioned again. So it's like a unification in which T'Challa literally fights every single one of these totems. So we can see what their power sets are like and create that spiritual warrior point. The entire point of Wakanda is that not only were they technologically advanced, but they were a warrior race. So make them fight. It creates the action. You understand? As well as adding to all of that, a redemption story for Hunter, the hyena clan, T'Challa's hyena clan brother,
Yeah.
and White Tiger and Casper Cole. A redemption story. We need that.
Yeah.
Dope. Dope. Okay, Lelouch, chime in on that one.
I mean, I don't think we've had a story really like that before. I mean, where you're literally just going unifying Wakanda to the audience where they can like really understand the differences between all the different tribes and why they operate how they do, and then also really getting to follow up with the totems to seeing what they really stand for. Um, I really appreciate something like that, and I feel like it would help us to understand more about Wakanda and its history. So I'd really appreciate that actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Rod, jump in.
Let me unmute. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I agree. I thought that was. I think that again, like Mamadou said, having those totems and having T'Challa fight them, seeing. I mean, and obviously all of them don't have to be allies because again, this in when Mamadou said that, that made me think of something. What's his rogues gallery looking like? Like
Thank you.
a hero's only as good as the villains they got. I mean, people. I'm sick of the Joker personally, but listen, if he's not iconic, I don't know who is. You
That's
know,
it.
people like certain, villains get mileage out of heroes, and T'Challa right now has no villains. He has no real enemies. And if you could do, you get the totems and you have them appear and the United Wakanda, and maybe you could do little intrigues of, oh well, Challenge Day, and maybe the Black Panther tribe isn't going to be the head tribe no more. Maybe it's going to be the hyenas. Maybe we gonna fight. Maybe it's gonna be this kind of thing where you can have them not only be sometimes enemies, sometimes allies, but you can also expand and then of course create new villains or new rogues or new adversaries for the Black Panther to go through, based on their different uh personalities and behaviors and ways of going about things. That's a 2-for-1 special with me. You expand more on the Wakandan landscape, and you also can create new characters who can serve it in different capacities. And I don't know why they're not like Mamadou said, they mention them twice, and they just it's like why mention them at all if you're just gonna let them drop. It's like they and obviously the problem is, and this is the problem with Black Panther. So Black Panther needs a writer like Dan Slott, who's gonna or who like Peter David for the Hulk, who's going to be writing, and whenever they want to write about Black Panther, and whenever they're writing for a long time, and they need to be able to write and fill out a landscape and tell stories, and they get a say And I personally thought it should have been Christopher Priest, but they get a say on what, even with Luke Cage. At one point in time, you couldn't do anything with Luke Cage or Jessica Jones without consulting Brian Michael Bendis. You can't do anything with the Hulk without consulting Peter David. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need that for the Black Panther. We need a writer like that, a creator like that, who's like, talk to him first.
Who's that
Talk
anchor?
to him first. Yeah, an anchor, right? Like, talk to him first, because they're gonna be, even if it's Don McGregor, I don't care. But somebody who likes the character and who had a passion about writing the character, like, I don't know if that works for this. I understand what you're trying to do, but that is not necessarily the framework we built this on. Because otherwise, you have continuity errors all over the place. You have Black Panther behaving one way in Avengers, one way in a Thor book, one way in his solo Unconquered book, one way in his own book, and one way in the World of Wakanda book or whatever. And it's just like a schizophrenic character. It's a character with multiple personality disorder. It's like, who is this person? And what is his world? And it's like everybody gets to kind of like, I'm going to clean slate it. And I find it I'm very dubious about the fact that it's Black Panther that they're doing this with. Because you're not going to make Matt Murdock Jewish. I'm not disrespecting Jews, but Matt Murdock is a Catholic. That is a part of his character. You're not going to make Superman, I'm for capitalism and this and this and this. No, it's not going to happen. You're not going to be like, Batman's going to be like, well, I'm protecting New Jersey and New Jersey's all that matters. No, that's not how the character works. With great power comes great flossing or whatever. Spider-Man's not leaving. That's not going away from Peter Parker. It's not even going away from Miles Morales. So why should the framework and the ethos of the character go away from T'Challa? I don't understand. Like, it's like everybody can just kind of paint by numbers with him, whatever they want to tell. And that makes the character, you don't attract new fans that way, because if you go back and read, Black Panther is one of the few characters and I'm sorry to be long, but Black Panther is one of the few characters who has somewhat of a minimal amount of reboots. He's one of the very few characters in modern day comics, like Daredevil, who have a very few amount of retcons or reboots, where you can look at Don McGregor's run and then go a through line straight through to the current run we have now, at least based on story. Well, not the current run we had now, but towards the end of Hudlin, you could see, okay, there's not a lot changing here. There's not a lot. Origins don't change. A lot of his story doesn't change. It's always, my father died, he was killed, I'm on my walkabout journey. We expand on that. Some things left and some things came, some new characters came up, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward for his story until we get to, I feel like at least, until we get to Coates and Ridley, where, again, Wakanda's this cesspool full of corruption and all sort of stuff. And it's just like, if you want to tell it, you can't attract new characters, new fans that way, because they'll look at Priest and McGregor and Hudlin's run and say, oh, this is all in keeping, and then look at Ridley and Coates' run and say, like, what is this? Like, who is this? Like, where did this come from? It's a big disconnect, like two different characters almost. And the old fans are going to be like, what did you do to this character? Like, this is who we've been following. Why'd you change him? So you want to avoid confusion in that manner in some ways, because old fans, at least a lot of old fans, I shouldn't say, oh, I don't know everybody, but at least if I was a new fan, rather, let's say, I would want to go, when I discover something new, I want to go back and find out all about it. I love doing that. I want to find out what I missed, right? Because it's not new, but it's new to you. If you go back and find out, oh, well, this dude was doing all this cool stuff and he had all of this stuff and he was, a tactician, and then you look at him now, you're like, well, this is
what happened.
What happened to him? What and the problem is, you know what the problem is? I could accept T'Challa being the person that he is in Coates' run if there was an event that made that make sense. Yeah, and there's no event that made that make sense.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to do it during the Black Order killing everybody in Wakanda, that's one thing. But they didn't do that because in Secret Wars, he wasn't behaving that way. He wasn't depressed. He wasn't despondent. He was like, I got to do this and I got to get my people back. And he did that. In Hickman's run, New Avengers, he wasn't behaving that way. But now he is. So where is there has to be some sort of incident that changes him, that makes him this depressed sad sack. And we never got that. It just, he's this depressed sad sack. He's being infantilized by everybody and talked down by everybody. Where did that come from? Where did that come from? It came from nowhere. And that's bad writing to me. It's like if you're a person who's taking the helm and you want to change a character or change something, give us an inciting incident that transitions. This is why this happened. This is why this, even if it's like, I sat down and had time to think about it. I keep bringing up, again, Daredevil was one of my favorite characters. In Mark Waid's run of Daredevil, after he went to jail, after Shadowland, all that stuff, Matt Murdock and Foggy have a conversation. And Foggy says, why are you so cheery? And he said, I just decided to forget it. Simple as that. I decided that I'm just going to live my life and try to be happy. Simple. Even if we had a panel like that, it would have been like, okay, well, I just had a time to think about all the deaths and everything that happened. And, how do I figure this out? And, I lost these people. Give us some insight into his character, into his mind. Like Mamadou said, something in his in his mind, like what could change you to become this, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do. It's like you were never that person. And there was nothing to show us how you became that person. So please give us a hint, give us some insight into that.
Word. Wow. So again, very, very powerful answers. Very, very very passionate brothers on here. I really appreciate y'all jumping in to this conversation. It's definitely not the last time we want to talk about this because, like I said, Wakandaverse is a whole initiative we want to engage people with and really keep pushing this so that Marvel hears the fans, that Marvel hears the fans, and that the fans hear the fans, and that the people who aren't the fans hear the fans, right. Because these stories are incredible and they have so much power, especially for the youth who are coming up. And yeah, y'all, so before we depart, Rod, I know you have a comic, and Mama Doll, I just want to say, I appreciate your service as a doctor to what you're doing for people who need it. So really, truly appreciate your efforts, brother. Rod, do you want to plug your comic one last time before we depart?
Yeah, definitely. Lawful Evil Comics, at Lawful Evil Comic, in a number of places, Twitter, Instagram. Our comics are on sale in Gumroad. If you're in the New York area, our comics are on sale physically at ForbiddenPlanetComics.com in New York City and Manhattan. If you're there, we're looking to get our books in other places as well, in other stores as well. Issue 1 and 2 are out right now, and issue 3 is out digitally, and we will be out for print next month. So, so physical and digital. So,
excellent.
Again, Great. It's Lawful Evil Comics.
Gotcha. Yo, we'll be checking that out, and we'll add it to our list and make sure that people are tapped into it. Mama Dow, do you have anything to promote or anything that's coming up for you that we should know about?
No, I'm all right.
All right, cool. I'm in MF Doom out here. Mama Dow foul. Yeah. Word up. Well, yeah, tap in with us, y'all. Wakanda Alliance program, Wakanda Alliance, thegalactictribe.org is our website. We will be reposting this on YouTube. It's been live streamed to YouTube and Twitter and everything, but I think we can break some of these things down and post some individual clips for our TikTok and everything like that. So I'm looking forward to doing that. But you look up the hashtag Wakanda Alliance, Wakandaverse. Listen, we're all over it. So truly excited that we got to do this conversation, and we'll definitely invite y'all both back and maybe get some more voices. I know that Discord is 64 people strong. There's a whole bunch of other people who are unheard, so this is going to be a great help to us going forward as we push forward. Lelouch, anything on the way out, bro?
No, just if you are in the Buffalo area, come through to the Delvin Grider Center this Saturday for the Wakandaverse live person workshop. We're going to create some stories there as well.
Yeah, we're going to create stories there too. Where there's a high school we'll be collaborating with to do the Wakandaverse project. I'm super stoked for that. I think a lot of the notes that I had here is going to help us develop that. And then on the 22nd, we're going to be doing a healing retreat, a nature retreat with Own Your Estimate. They're hosting it, and they brought us on to talk about climate justice and what Wakanda means. And also, I'm gonna do a little bit of capoeira, so that's gonna be a really nice exercise. So until then, y'all, Mama Dow Fall and Rob, appreciate y'all both coming on tonight. And at the end of our sessions, we just say, yo, keep it future forward and Wakanda forever. We'll see y'all soon. All right.
Peace. Thank you.
All right.